If you love yoga, have you ever considered teaching it part-time as a side gig without changing your whole life or quitting your current job? I'd say only about 15% of the 400 plus teachers I've trained over the years have become full-time yoga teachers, and most of them only decided to go full-time after a few years of certifying and teaching part-time first. So you might be wondering, can I teach yoga alongside my current life and still make it meaningful and worthwhile? I'm Stewart-Brown, founder of Indiv Yoga, the voice of the British Airways Yoga and Mindfulness onboard program, and I've trained over 400 yoga, meditation, and kids yoga teachers around the world. In this video, I'm going to take you through a comprehensive look at teaching yoga part-time after a YTT, or Yoga Teacher Training course. We're going to look at the positives, what's harder than most people expect, the reality, and what success typically looks like in the first 3 to 12 months after you certify. So first, what is teaching yoga part-time? Part-time can look very different depending on your goals, schedule, and energy. Some common versions include 1 to 2 classes per week, usually evenings or weekends, 3 to 5 classes per week, which is a more committed side gig, private clients only, where you can charge more money, but there's more work planning and tailoring the sessions for the individual. Substituting, which is more sporadic and unpredictable whenever a studio or gym needs cover. Then you also have corporate or workplace sessions, usually once a week in the place where you work, or occasional workshops or retreats, which can be harder to get going in the beginning without an established client base. And one important thing to consider is this: the classes themselves don't account for all the time you'll be dedicating. You also need time for class planning, communication and marketing, and travel, unless you're teaching from your own home. Now let's talk about something I find fascinating, which is who do you teach straight after your YTT as you're building confidence? There are 2 groups newly qualified teachers fall into. Type 1 are teachers who don't want to teach anyone they know to begin with. That was me when I finished my first training over 17 years ago. I didn't want to teach friends or family. For the first few months, I was advertising on Facebook for private clients who wanted one-to-one classes at their homes. I had quit everything, dedicated myself full-time to teaching. I wasn't working with any studio and had no space in my tiny apartment. My pitch was, first 6 people to reply to this post get 1 free private yoga class at their house. Because people love freebies, and luckily all 6 became weekly clients for years afterwards. And looking back, I think I felt a bit of imposter syndrome or embarrassment showing this new me as a yoga teacher to people that already knew me. In time, I became comfortable and confident in my identity as a committed and professional teacher, and then I could teach my old friends easily. So type 2 is the opposite. I've had many students express shock when I tell them my story. They say that teaching someone they don't know straight away would feel terrifying. They want to begin by practicing teaching friends and family and people they feel completely comfortable with first. So there's no right or wrong here, as long as you get on with teaching, even if it's just your mum once a week. Here's an advice nugget. I usually recommend teaching complete beginners or near beginners right after your yoga teacher training. With beginners to yoga, there's often less judgment, fewer preconceived ideas about what a yoga class should look like, and you're the professional in the room. But some people prefer to start with non-beginners because they feel they won't have to explain as much, and honestly, each to their own. Now, reality check. How quickly can you start teaching after your YTT? Personally, I encourage my students to start teaching immediately so they keep the momentum going after our 2-week live course, and so that they don't lose confidence. But some people need to settle back into normal life first, then see how teaching fits into their week comfortably and realistically. A healthy expectation looks like this. Month 1 to 2, perhaps practice teaching people you know, do some substituting, and build a small routine. Month 3 to 6, more consistent classes and your first private clients. Month 6 to 12, a more stable schedule, a clearer teaching style, and stronger word of mouth. If you want this to be sustainable, think build, not launch. So what changes after a yoga teacher training course? A really good yoga teacher training should give you the foundations, skills, knowledge, and confidence to teach a yoga class the day after you finish. What changes is that you now have a foundational knowledge of history, philosophy, and the deeper elements of yoga beyond what you usually see in a gym class. An understanding of anatomy and physiology and how this relates to yoga poses. The ability to offer modifications and variations for different bodies and abilities. The skill of structuring and sequencing classes so you're not improvising blindly. Language tools, cueing, themes, pacing, communication, and how and when to bring in elements beyond asana, like pranayama, mindfulness, or meditation. You also learn the basics of marketing yourself and the business side of teaching, even if you're doing it just part-time. And most importantly, you gain the confidence to begin, even if it's shaky at first. What doesn't change is that you still need consistency to build confidence and students. Teaching yoga part-time works best when you treat it like learning an instrument. Simple, regular practice beats occasional intensity. And I'll add something here. Unlike many trainings I've heard of, my students practice teaching a full 75-minute class, as well as pranayama methods and different meditation techniques. I find it crazy that some people can certify as a 200-hour yoga teacher without ever teaching a full class during their training. If you haven't practiced teaching a full class under supervision, it's much harder to leave the course and suddenly feel confident teaching in the real world. Now let's get into the biggest pros of teaching yoga part-time after your YTT. Number 1, you keep financial stability while building skills. For most people, the smartest path isn't quit your job, it's build slowly. Teaching yoga part-time gives you the space to develop skill and confidence without needing immediate income to cover your rent. It can be extra pocket money or a gentler stepping stone towards teaching full-time later. Number 2, teaching deepens your practice fast. It forces you to understand what you're doing, not just feel it. Alignment, transitions, modifications, and breath become more precise when you guide other humans through them. Many people find their own practice becomes more consistent and more intelligent, and often you end up learning more from your students than they learn from you. Number 3 is you can explore different teaching styles without pressure. Part-time is the perfect testing ground. You can try static hatha versus dynamic vinyasa flow, gentle yoga versus restorative yoga, different class setups, different mat layouts with or without music, mixed level classes versus just beginners, more or less demonstrating, more or less verbal cueing, more or less breath work, mindfulness or meditation, or even just breath work, just mindfulness or meditation classes. This experimentation is a huge benefit because you're allowing yourself to evolve. Number 4, it expands your community and confidence. Teaching puts you in rooms with people you might never meet otherwise. It builds confidence that spills into work, relationships, and communication, and it can create a genuine sense of connection and belonging for your students and for you. Some of my best friends now were initially clients or students. Number 5, it's genuinely meaningful work. Even one class per week can matter. People come to yoga for grief, anxiety, pain, loneliness, illness, burnout, stress, and life transitions, like being pregnant for the first time. And your steady presence can be surprisingly impactful. A single class can help someone sleep better, manage stress, feel less alone, move without fear, feel less pain, or simply breathe properly for the first time all day. Over the years, I've had many clients see me as a type of therapist for them. Now let's talk about the honest cons of teaching yoga part-time and what to do about them. Number one, time creep is real. A 60-minute class can actually be 2 to 3 hours when you include planning, travel, setup, communication, and the mental energy of holding a room. To make it sustainable, create a class plan for a group and stick with it for a couple of months. Vary the warm-up based on what the group needs that day. Build within an asana group from easier to harder poses, and vary the style of shavasanas you guide them through. I've always considered the first class with any group as a kind of consultation. I assess limitations, weaknesses, and imbalances, write notes after the class, and then create a sequence for their needs. For big gym classes with inconsistent attendance, you can rotate 2 to 4 reusable class templates and keep modifications in mind. Build a sequence bank and refine it over time, and plan in modules, so warm up, asana groups, peak poses, and cool down. Number 2, confidence wobbles are normal. Almost everyone has a "who am I to teach yoga" insecurity or imposter phase. That doesn't mean you shouldn't teach. It means you're learning. And just because you're not full-time doesn't make you any less genuine or passionate about sharing yoga with others. What helps is starting with beginners or mixed level foundations, practicing cueing out loud, even alone, focusing on clarity and safety, not performance, and teaching from the heart. Remember, you're the only certified yoga teacher in the room. You know more than you're probably giving yourself credit for. Number 3, early income can be inconsistent. Studio classes, gym classes, and community classes vary widely. It can take time to build attendance and opportunities. A realistic approach is start with one reliable weekly slot. Then later add one growth lever, like private clients, corporate classes, a short series, or a workshop. And make the classes about what the students need, not just what you feel like teaching. Care, attention, and authenticity translate into regular attendance, good reviews, and word of mouth. Number 4, the business side of teaching yoga can feel awkward. Pricing, promoting, selling yourself can feel un-yogic. But here's a reframe. You're not selling yoga, you're inviting people into an experience that helps them, and they'll respect that you have bills to pay and are giving up your time and energy to bring them some benefit. What helps is simple messaging. Who are your classes for? What can people expect? And how will they feel afterwards? And then consistency over intensity. Post once a week, not 7 times, and then disappear. Number 5, your first bad class will happen. The class might be too long, too complex, too quiet, too chaotic, or the playlist might die mid-shavasana. What helps is remembering this is part of becoming a teacher. Nothing is perfect, and you shouldn't expect yourself to be perfect either. Every teacher has bad classes, and students are always more forgiving than we are with ourselves. And if you haven't put someone in hospital, you can learn from it and move on. So debrief yourself gently. What worked? What didn't? What will I change next time? And then keep teaching anyway. It's like falling off a horse and getting back on. Teaching yoga part-time is a learning curve, like everything else in life. So give yourself a break, breathe, and enjoy the learning experience. Now, what are studios and students actually looking for in a yoga teacher? When decision makers choose new teachers, they're rarely looking for the most advanced practitioners who can do incredible handstand variations. They're looking for someone who is certified and confident, reliable and punctual, clear and safe, good with mixed levels, calm under pressure, consistent in-class quality, easy to communicate with, and looks clean, happy, and healthy. And students come back when they feel welcomed, seen, safe, guided clearly, and calmer and better in their body after your class. That's the heart of teaching yoga part-time after YTT. Not performance or perfection, but service and skill. Now I'm going to give you a practical 10-step plan for teaching part-time after you certify. Step 1 is decide your minimum viable schedule. For example, 1 class per week for 3 months. Make it small enough that you'll actually do it. Step 2 is choose a simple niche for now. Not a rigid identity, just a starting point that you feel comfortable with. For example, beginners and foundations, elderly or reduced mobility, stress and anxiety relief, dynamic flow, restorative or gentle yoga, prenatal, teenagers, and make sure that your brand and marketing don't narrow your niche too much. So if you called your site and handles, Restorative Yoga London, it will be harder for you to then branch out into vinyasa classes later on. And you don't want to change brands or handles and lose all the marketing efforts and organic growth that you've built up. So step 3 is to build 3 repeatable class templates, which to be honest, you should already have from your 200 hours teacher training course. But if not, then create 3 60 or 75-minute class plans that you can rotate and refine. Practice changing the pace and flow to suit different groups and energies. And very important is to remember the necessary modifications some of your students might need. Step 4, and this is an important one, teach before you feel ready, because readiness comes from teaching. Step 5 is ask for feedback. Ask questions like, what felt most helpful today? Was anything unclear? Encourage students to offer feedback by telling them to feel free to get in touch with you and let you know if something didn't resonate with them. And if you have students' contact details, you can follow up by text or email, ask how they found the class and what they'd like more of or what didn't suit them. After Shavasana, I often check that everyone feels well and remind them it's normal to feel muscle soreness for a day or 2, but if they feel discomfort after a couple of days, to let me know so that I can adjust the sequence the following week. Step 6 is track your best bits. Keep a notes app with cues, sequences, playlists, and what landed well. Also note what didn't land well. That's where the learning happens. And it's why seeing your students properly and reading their faces and bodies is so important. I'll sometimes take some notes while students are lying in Shavasana, as the class is still fresh in my mind, especially regarding any students' imbalances, weaknesses, or limitations, so that I can factor those in for the next class. Step 7 is to add 1 growth lever when you're ready. Add 1 more thing, a private client, a corporate class, a 4-week beginners series, a class of a different yoga style, or perhaps a collaboration or workshop with a local partner space. Step 8, another important one, is protect your energy. If you burn out, you stop teaching. Sustainable beats intense. So be realistic and kind about your capacity, your mental health, physical health, and your schedule. At one point, I ran myself into the ground because I didn't like teaching after a heavy meal. I was teaching 5 or 6 classes a day and barely eating until the evening. I got sick and I had to step back and plan my rest and meals so I could be a better teacher for myself and for my students. This is the difference between I tried it for a month and a long-term fulfilling path. Step 9, set up a site or social media pages. Even if you're only teaching 1 class a week, set up a social media page using your name or a yoga business name. Even if you're not teaching yet, still set them up. The longer they've existed, the more credibility you'll have later. And you don't want the brand name you've chosen to be taken by someone else, especially if you love it. So check that the social handles and the domain are available as soon as possible. Domain names don't cost much, and I think it's worth it. People need a way to find you. And yes, the reality is that if you're not online, you don't really exist. So if you think you'll make teaching a regular part of your life, consider a simple one-page website too. Have fun coming up with a business name and a logo. It makes your identity as a teacher feel more real and helps you to commit. Step 10 is also very important, as I'm sure you'll appreciate, because it's to ask for reviews. If you don't have a business address, you might not be able to set up Google Business, but you can still get reviews on Facebook, which many people still use. Nowadays, people rarely buy anything or choose somewhere to go without reading reviews or hearing about it by word of mouth. And a quick note, testimonials on your website, your own website, if they aren't official reviews from a Google or Facebook widget, usually aren't trusted by savvy internet users because people know that you can control what shows up on your own site. So consider promotions that encourage word of mouth, like tell a friend reward, because word of mouth is still one of the most effective marketing strategies today. And don't be shy about asking clients to take 1 minute to write you a quick review once they've come to a few of your classes. You can also ask them to comment on your posts if you feel comfortable doing so. Now let's cover a few FAQs people usually have, like how much can I charge as a part-time yoga teacher after my yoga teacher training? So there's no simple answer, sadly. It depends on where you live, and even within one country, prices can vary massively. Sometimes cities allow higher prices, but if the market is saturated, sometimes prices are more competitive. So do your research, look at what other teachers are charging, and I usually advise starting slightly lower than the market to get going at the beginning. Also, pricing is psychological. Some people are attracted to lower prices, and in some demographics, people assume higher prices means higher quality. So it really does depend on where you live. Do I need to be advanced at yoga to teach? Answer is no. You need solid foundations, good training, and a willingness to keep learning. Many students actually report preferring a teacher that has limitations and is honest about their weak points. People want a teacher they can relate to, not someone who they feel intimidated by because they show off fancy handstands or are super flexible or have the perfect body. Be real, be human, and that authenticity will shine through and attract clients. What kind of classes can I teach after my certification? Okay, well, it depends on what your YTT covered and what you can safely and correctly teach. If you did an Ashtanga training, for instance, that's what you'll be trained to teach. If the course is broader, it's usually easier to offer variety and paces and styles. My course, for instance, covers Hatha Vinyasa and restorative yoga, so that my teachers are confident in creating sequences tailored for different types of clients and situations. So will a YTT teach me how to confidently sequence? Well, a good teacher training course should, but confidence also comes from repetition and feedback during and after training. A strong course environment encourages learning from the teacher, the group, sharing sequences and receiving supportive feedback. Can I teach if I'm not super flexible? Yes. As I've mentioned, many excellent teachers aren't. It's a realistic portrayal of real bodies. Clarity and presence matter more than shapes. And as I've said, many students prefer a teacher they can relate to. What if I'm an introvert? Well, introverts often become brilliant teachers because they listen well and they create calm, spacious rooms. Stay authentic. Students don't need you to be loud. They need you to make them feel safe and seen. What if I only want to teach occasionally? Well, that's fine. Teaching yoga part-time can be a meaningful one class a week path. But if it's too sporadic right after your YTT, you might fall out of the groove and lose confidence. If you're going through periods without teaching, teach yourself sometimes. Talk through your cues out loud while you practice. Now let's finish with the big question. Is teaching yoga part-time the right fit for me? It's a great fit if you want a new skill and a meaningful side path, personal growth and confidence, community and a creative outlet, a realistic way to begin without financial pressure, a certificate that you can use anytime and anywhere in the world if it's a Yoga Alliance certificate, and the option to expand your teaching later or keep it small forever. It's not always easy, but it's absolutely doable when you approach it with structure, patience, and repetition. So build slowly, teach consistently, refine what works, and remember, the real version of teaching yoga part-time after a YTT is not about instant mastery. It's about steady development and genuine service. And if this topic has made you feel excited about the idea of teaching yoga part-time, and you'd like to learn with me, check out my Yoga Alliance 200 Hours Yoga Teacher Training course. The course gives you everything you need to start teaching with confidence and professionalism, including practical sequencing, anatomy, physiology, yoga history and philosophy, and the ability to tailor and sequence classes for different types of students. It's held in a beautifully renovated 16th century riverside chateau property in France, and the training blends Hatha, Vinyasa, and restorative yoga with a strong emphasis on mindfulness, pranayama, and meditation, and the real life skills that matter when you begin teaching yoga part-time after your YTT. If you'd like details like dates, location, syllabus, and pricing, and whether it's a good fit, click on the course page under the Yoga tab on indivyoga.com, and feel free to get in touch if you have any questions. Namaste.